In this lecture, we will learn how to fetch records from the database. To fetch or retrieve records or data from the server, we use the get method. This is generally used as read-only method, that is only used to get data from a particular resource, so it has no risk of data corruption. For example, if we are using a get method on our API, it is just going to fetch and show the data. It is not going to make any changes in the server records. Let's begin. Let me open user.js file, and I will say here user.get slash, that is root endpoint, comma, request and response object arrow function. Next is all the connection stuff, so let me do some copy paste work. I am copying the database connection method and then changing the MongoDB method accordingly. Now let's come to the actual implementation. To fetch records from MongoDB, we have the find method. Find method takes two arguments. First argument is filter, that is the where condition, and the second argument is options, that is which columns to select or sort, etc. So after collection users, I will say dot find parentheses and the first argument filter. I am keeping it as an empty object to return all the records. For now, I am not passing the second argument as it is optional anyway. This is not yet done here, because find method returns a cursor instead of the actual data, which can be manipulated with using for each or toArray methods. Let's see. So I will say here const cursor. Well, we are free to give it any name, but to be clear, I have kept the variable name as cursor equals this result of the execution. And I will say response.send. Let's save this and let me quickly execute this API in the browser. I'll say localhost 5000 user and enter. And here is the result, which is not the actual data because the find method has returned the cursor. So what will we do to get the actual data? Let's go back to the code. I mentioned that cursor can be manipulated with for each loop or toArray method. So I will say cursor dot toArray parentheses and the regular error and response data object, that is error comma response data arrow function, and in that response dot send response data. Let's save this and once again execute the API. So here we have the actual result now. Okay, now suppose if I want only the name column in the list, I will pass the second argument in the find method, that is projection colon curly brackets name to the column that we want in the select list. For example, I just want the name column, so I will say name colon 1. I can also directly chain toArray to find method like this. Save this and execute this once again. So here we have the result. Now the result has returned only the ID and name column in the list. If we want to add a filter, we will add that in the first argument like name colon James Bond. Let's save this and execute, and here is the result. This way we can fetch the records from the MongoDB database using the get method. So now we have learned how to insert, update, delete and fetch data using different HTTP methods and MongoDB methods. But this doesn't end here. We can build more complex logics and queries to implement or fulfill our needs. As I mentioned earlier, it is the query or database methods that do the job, and the way the data is passed and manipulated in the API. To understand database and learn how to write complex queries, follow my database course.